made his peace with God. In the year 1672, a man named George Brown sat in prison in London. He had done nothing that we would think wrong today. He was a farmer, and the year before there had been heavy rains that drowned out the grass for his sheep. He himself was ill from going out in the cold, wet rain to try to save what he could of his farm. But no matter how he tried, he could not save enough to pay the rent. At that time in England, if a man could not pay a bill or his rent, he was put in prison. And that is what happened to George Brown. It was a silly law because while a man was in prison, he could never earn the money to pay what he owed. George Brown was a proud man, yet here he was, lying in a pile of straw in prison. Prison then did not give prisoners cots to sleep on. The only time a prisoner could get enough to eat or anything else he needed was when some friends or members of his family came to visit him. George Brown's wife and his young son and daughter came to see him often, and they were usually downhearted. But today, as the prisoner lay on the straw, holding an aching head and wondering what he could do, he heard them laughing happily. He sat up and slowly looked at them with wonder. His wife was smiling, but when she started to speak, she choked up. "You are free, father," she called the children. "You are free." And they jumped up and down with delight. "But how?" asked Farmer Brown, not daring to believe the news. "You know I cannot go free unless someone pays the money I owe for rent on the farm." "Who will pay it?" "A gentleman you have never seen or heard of," answered his wife between sobs of joy. "His name is James Oglethorpe, a stranger. Why should he do such a thing? What does he want?" "He wants nothing. He will even give us a home," Miss Brown assured her husband. By this time other prisoners crowded around eager to hear. "Now, wife," said George Brown, "tell me what this means." The gentleman said, "Mr. Brown, this great rich gentleman, Mr. Oglethorpe, has asked King Charles for a certain piece of land across the ocean in the colonies of America. He is picking Englishmen who are in prison for owing money and sending them to that land in America. He chooses only men who are respectable and hard-working, as you are, my husband. He will pay what you owe. More, he will get a ship and send you and us to America. Once there, he will give each one a piece of land for a farm." Farmer Brown looked more astonished than ever. "But why should he do such a thing? Why?" "I do not understand myself," said his wife. "I thought at first that in America we would have to work for him, but he says he does not want to make any money from the colony. We would work only for ourselves." Some of the other prisoners were now wild with excitement. Could I go to begged one after another? "He will choose the people from among you, I pray, that you will all be chosen," said Miss Brown. Not all wanted to go. Several said, "Not I. I do not want to go to America, where there are bears and other wild animals, and no theatres, nothing but hard work." One prisoner told the Browns, "You will be 3 months on the ocean. Pirates will chase you. The boat will sink. I would rather stay here in prison than face such danger." But Farmer Brown knelt in prayer and thanked God for his goodness. A man, a little better dressed than the rest, now came up. "What is this?" he asked. They told him that a gentleman named James Oglethorpe was about to pay for the freedom of Farmer Brown, and was going to send him and his family to America, and all for nothing but kindness on his part. "The news is passing strange, and the gentleman I used to know, Mr. James Oglethorpe, he was a bold young man. He served with me at Flanders in the army of the Duke of Marlborough." "In the wars against the Dutch that we won?" asked one of the prisoners. "Yes," said the gentleman. "And one day a strange thing happened. After we won the war, the Duke gave a fine dinner to celebrate our victory. One of the guests was a German prince. We did not like this prince, but he had fought on our side, and we were polite to him. He considered himself better than anyone else, and he thought the way to prove his importance was to insult someone. He did not dare to insult the Duke, but as he looked around the table, he saw right across from him a very young Englishman who was only a lieutenant. That was James Oglethorpe, who, the prince thought, would not dare to answer back. Soon the prince's questions grew insulting. Oglethorpe kept his temper and answered as quietly as he could. The rest of the table sat listening. At last the prince laughed nastily and said, "What would you do in a case like this?" He lifted a wine glass from the table. A few drops were left in the bottom. He threw these in Oglethorpe's face. James did not wipe away the liquid. He let it drip, but his own glass was full. "This is what I would do," he said, in the same quiet, polite voice he had used all along. He threw his glass full of wine to the prince's face. Like all bullies, the prince was furious when someone defied him. "Punish this insolent puppy! Arrest him!" he yelled. But the English Duke of Marlborough looked at this German prince with a little smile and said only, "It served you right." The prisoners all laughed. Farmer Brown was more surprised than ever and said, "If he was a nobody, then how did he become so wealthy that he can send us to America?" The gentleman explained that a good deal of Oglethorpe's money came from capturing Negroes in Africa and selling them as slaves. "They do say," he added, "that now he is ashamed of it and wants to do something to make up for having practiced that trade. Perhaps to make peace with God," said Mr. Brown. And so it must have been, for when Farmer Brown and the others arrived in America, they learned there was no Negro slavery in Oglethorpe's colony. This was astonishing because in that day most people believed in slavery, but as long as Oglethorpe remained in command, he would not permit slavery in his colony, and it was the only one in America where it was not allowed. The colony where Farmer Brown and his family went was at first part of North Carolina, but later it broke off and became Georgia, and Georgia it is today. Georgia was the last colony settled that later became one of the United States. Everyone there could have any religion he wished. That too was a big step ahead for freedom. This was truly a colony of the people.